For the other book that I've done, Pickles, about an unexpected relationship between a runaway or an escaped circus elephant and a small grumpy pig. Enjoying Starbucks coffee. You can see where else I steal my ideas from. It's funny, I peppered this book filled with famous paintings that I had ripped apart, and it just the lawyers from I had a new publisher at the time. The lawyers had no idea that I knew that I was doing this, and they thought I was sneaking this past them, and that I hadn't realized that I was borrowing it. Probably like the old days when I used to unexpectedly channel and steal Gary Trudeau's ideas in 1982. I think they thought that I was stealing famous artist ideas, and I didn't know it at the time. And it just caused them all sorts of fits dealing with this book. But this idea came from this drawing, which is the first one I did, showing the relationship between an elephant and a pig. And this drawing came from this one, if you can see it. That's my daughter's drawing that I've done on the bar. So if you can stand up, take this. You have made my children's day, folks. Thank you very much. And I love this because it shows the continuity of where an idea can come from, and that I need to remind myself that those ideas are flowing all the time toward us, and if we're blind, we can miss them, and they can end up in incredible things, incredible movies. I mean, if Gladiator happens to be one of my favorite films in the past 10 years, and if anyone have read the DVD or seen the DVD extras, you would know that the entire reason that movie existed is because Ridley Scott saw a painting whose name in Latin I can't remember. Some of you may know it, correct me. But it's a famous painting from the 19th century of a gladiator lying down with the winning gladiator, foot on his neck, and he's waving to the crowd. The crowd's giving him thumbs down. Fairly well-known painting by a great 19th century realist. And he looked at that painting and said, that is a movie. And they wrote it all backwards from that moment. A little like I wrote Red Ranger backwards from stumbling up on a tree with a bicycle in it. I love ideas. The best ideas have that chain of connection back to something that caused inspiration. Inspiration is something that's hard to come by. You have to be open to it. So those were some of mine. This is my last book that's out a couple weeks ago, is called Flawed Dogs, the novel, The Shocking Raid on Westminster. This is my first try at a novel, and it's a story of probably the most beautiful dachshund ever to have been born, and he falls in love, or falls in with, a little girl named Heidi. And they begin to have a perfect relationship. Of course, things turn bad, and a jealous poodle named Cassius engineers his fall from grace to family and even good health. And Sam the lion, which is the name of the dachshund, spends years in a very, very poor space. Timid slide, great. And he ends up in the world's worst dog pound, called the National Last Ditch Dog Depository, with the last of the worst of the shelter dogs that cannot be adopted, the unwanted, the most wretched wrecks in dogdom. And he puts them together into a commando team to go back to Westminster and wreck it. And the Westminster Dog Show. And Sam's real motive, of course, is revenge, and to get Cassius and kill him. These are some of the dogs. I recognize Brad Pitt. I'll be hearing from his lawyers, no doubt, after this. This is Wee Willie, who has a tendency to go up noses. When they get to the Westminster Dog Show, they do some attacking in a very unique method. You know what? If anything will get Watterson out of this hole and will reemerge, it's this one. And I did it on purpose. I haven't heard from Bill for 15 years, and I'm going to hear from him now. I have the greatest collection of letters in my file from Bill. Back in the days when we were both fighting syndicates in the early 90s, he was having a terrible fight trying to get the rights to Calvin Hobbes back, and he was having a fight that I never had, in that we did some licensing with Bloom County, and some of you are wearing some of it right now, I can see. As you know, Bill Watterson would have nothing to do with licensing. A great story because it was probably in the realm of $200 to $250 million a year was in the balance with that decision not to do it. You can imagine how that went over with his syndicate. And in those days, you didn't own your comic strips. So here was a guy that didn't even own Calvin Hobbes. Universal Press Syndicate owned it. He was hired labor as far as they were concerned. Contraction, that's what he was. That's what we all were. And here they're looking at a corporation looking at $250 million a year for years, probably. That's before movie rights. And the artist is going, no, I want to go away. Don't do it. So he's having these terrible fights, trying to get the rights back, afraid terribly that they're going to start making the stuff that, for whatever reason, he feared terribly. And so we were exchanging letters back and forth. And you would not know that the sweet Bill Watterson of Calvin and Hobbes has a deadly sense of humor, as all cartoonists do when you cut the flack away. And I have some great drawings. It's always at my expense. He's always drawing. He's standing with one foot on a powerboat, the other with up on the dock, and I'm pouring dollar bills into the gas tank while I'm collecting them from my syndicate head, who's been selling merchandise to pay for the gasoline that I'm putting in my powerboat. This is drawn like a Calvin Hobbes cartoon. And that was only the nicer of them. But cartoonists write to each other this way. It's actually a form of affection, believe it or not. And I've got a whole file of these things that I can't show you, because actually I should, because that would get him out of the hole. And one day we'll hear from Bill. There's a movie right now, it's called Looking for Bill. And it's a movie about the search for Bill Watterson. And they're going to try to dig him up, and I hope that they don't confront him on his hometown street, but they're going to try. So we'll hear how that goes. So I jumped past my story. Flawed Dogs ends at a moment in the Westminster Dog Show when all hell has been released and Sam has fallen and is passing on. And Heidi has finally found him after 3 years. And a surprising character enters. And I'm not going to give it away. In fact, I'm not going to tell you more. Hopefully, some of your kids may read it, or you may. But the reason I'm bringing this book up in this speech is, once again, to talk about sources of ideas. There was a photograph that I pasted on the top of my computer for the entire 4 months that I spent writing this. That was my daily inspiration as to what this is all about. Wait, that's all you need. And it's this. This is a picture of Michael Vick's, one of Michael Vick's fighting dogs that was removed and was going to be destroyed until a shelter in Utah took him and gave him a last chance. All the dogs were going to be destroyed until they did. This is the moment when he, for the very first time in this dog's life, and a life spent years in the worst kind of brutality, taught only to hate, faced only 5 minutes, faced only with hate, faced with the cruelty that you and I can't imagine, or some of you have read about, never having felt any kindness from a human being in his life. This is where he's receiving it for the first time. And you can see that everything in it, what makes a dog tick, is still there and it's coming back, and he's becoming a dog again. And for a storyteller, this is like the bicycle in the tree. This is what we live for. It's what I live for. And I wanted to write a story back from this moment. And that's what Flawed Dogs was, is really exploring the concept. And this is the other thing that was pasted on my computer. And I don't know who actually said it the first time, but I think it's a quote from a couple hundred years ago. All animals dream, only dogs dream of us. And I thought that is a theme for a book, and it hasn't been explored. And the fact that it's so true as a storyteller, that of all the millions of species out there on the planet, only one animal actually just lives for showing us affection. They have really no other purpose. You can train them to do other things, but they come right down to it. All they want is us. A badger doesn't do that. A mosquito will. A mosquito wants it for the wrong reason. And I don't think that has been explained adequately in a movie yet. We all talk about how we love the dogs so much, and that's usually the theme in a movie. They love us in a weird way. And what do? We betray them. That's a movie. That's a story. That's a novel. So that's what Flawed Dogs is.